Okay, so here we are with the last of our opening triumvirate of classic Doctor Who reviews, talking about Castrovalva and sealing the black Velcro flap on the master trilogy of stories that link the respective end and beginning of the 4th and 5th Doctor eras. I don't know about you, but I love a post-regeneration story. Well, at least I often love the first bits of a post-regeneration story. I think certainly as far as the classic series goes, Spearhead from Space, the opening serial of the 3rd Doctor era, is probably the only one that fully nails it as a perfectly rounded adventure story. But we're here to talk about Castrovalva, transmitted across January 1982, written by Christopher H. Bidmead and directed by Fiona Cumming. As a whole, it's not one of the great stories. It's not terrible, not at all, but it's a story that perhaps didn't have the resources to properly do justice to its central conceit, the Doctor finding himself in a sort of surreal, twisted, MC Escher-inspired environment that's playing havoc with the Doctor's new brain chemistry. Except we don't even enter Castrovalva until the 3rd episode, so it's not really about that at all. In fact, it's a story about regeneration. And 80s Doctor Who is obsessed with regeneration. It's always banging on about it, with the events that actually take place in Castrovalva only adding to the Doctor's stabilisation fug. Still, before then we have 2 really fun episodes, pretty much all set in the TARDIS, with some traditional erratic new Doctor shenanigans. And just to remind us that this really is all about regeneration, we actually get a pre-credit reprise, baby! A repeat of the 4th Doctor becoming the 5th. What a treat! So we get the 5th Doctor wandering around the TARDIS in a confused state, unravelling his scarf as he goes, which is such a great visual metaphor for saying goodbye to the past, and channeling previous Doctors, holding his braces like Hartner, holding his lapels, panicking around like Troughton, tootling on a recorder, name-dropping old companions. It's all like great stuff. While all this is going on, he's being followed around by a projection of Adric. The real Adric we see is a prisoner in the Master's TARDIS, trussed up in some kind of bondage scaffolding, while the Master uses the boy's maths brain to create the Adric projection through block transfer computation. That thing we all hoped we'd never hear about again after Legopolis. Every now and then the Master will get closer to Adric by using a hilariously super slow rising dais that he must have built on purpose just for that, because, you know, who wouldn't want to get 1 foot closer to Adric's face? Fake Adric is there to mess with the Doctor's TARDIS and instigate a trap of the Master's making. The TARDIS is being sent back to Event 1, the Big Bang. The Master wants to blow the Doctor up using the biggest explosion in the history of everything. It's a pretty out there choice, since he could just have fake Adric slit the Doctor's throat, but then, as we will see more and more, this Master is proper pantomime nuts, and he gets increasingly hammy in his tash-twiddling villainy as time goes by. But there's also some interesting stuff with Nyssa and Tegan as they desperately try to work out what to do with the Doctor out of action, or if not out of action, at least stuck floating about in the soft pink glow of the Zero Room. Essentially what you might imagine to be on the other side of the round window from old BBC Tiny Tot show Play School, while being badly edited so that the Doctor is a mirror reflection with clearly backward question marks on his shirt collars. I mean, guys, come on! Anyway, I really enjoy this notion of how essentially hopeless people would be stuck in this massive crazy machine without the Doctor around. They'd be screwed. Luckily, the heat and chaos from Event 1 has caused a surge in adrenaline in the Doctor, which means he's temporarily able to help Tegan and Nyssa escape the explosion by jettisoning a quarter of the TARDIS interior. This is annoying to the Master, but not too much, since, of course, he's laid a trap behind that trap. Jeez, this guy and his traps. You can still use fake Adric to poison the Doctor's toast, you know. Anyway, it works, but at the cost of the Zero Room. Luckily, there's enough panels left to make a Zero cabinet that will have the same stabilising effect on the Doctor's biology. Although I'm not sure, having just gone through 1 death, I'd be that happy about being shoved into what basically looks like a coffin. But it will do the job until the TARDIS can get to Castrovalva. Remember that place? You know, the one this adventure is named after? Anyway, turns out it's what the TARDIS databank calls a dwelling of simplicity, and just the place to go for this kind of post-regeneration trauma. What luck! Tegan apparently flies the TARDIS and lands there, but sort of on its side, which it looks great. It looks fantastic as she climbs out of it. And then she and Nyssa, now in these great velvet trousers, have to lug the Doctor's Zero coffin to Castrovalva, which sits at the top of a small mountain. That turns out to be impossible, of course, so they go by themselves, leaving the Doctor hidden in some ferns. When they get back to him after running away from some elaborately dressed hunters, they find that he's gone and that there are spots of blood lying around the ground. But everything's okay, as he's just followed the hunters himself back to the entrance of Castrovalva, where they capture him in a really friendly sort of way and take him in with them. Unfortunately, now the Doctor can't remember who he is. Blimey, never rains but it pours, eh? Still, everyone is nice and patient with him, including the poor Treve, the elder leader of the place. Now, he looks and sounds, I don't know, kind of familiar? Bah, whatever. It's probably not important. The TARDIS crew are all eventually reunited, apart from Adric, still hanging up in the Master's love dungeon, with Nyssa worrying that until he's properly regenerated, the Doctor's terribly vulnerable, which is pretty spot on for someone who just met the Doctor about 3 days ago. Still, she's right, especially as the Doctor looks around at the Escher insanity of his surroundings and desperately cries out, "We're caught in a space-time trap!" And now we finally learn the truth. The poor Treve, it turns out, is the Master. Gasp! Actually, it's a pretty good disguise, and I distinctly remember, as a kid, almost falling out of the sofa in utter shock. And Castrovalva, and everyone in it, is a construction of the Master. More block transfer Well, anyway, it's all fake. Like fake Adric, created by the real Adric, suspended in the Master's rumpy-pumpy rig, his trap behind the trap. This is where the logic really gets a bit fuzzy. The Master got Adric to put all this fake information about Castrovalva in the TARDIS databank because he knew the Doctor's regeneration was going to be shonky, and therefore his companions would be left on their own and try to work out how to help, and would need an easy way to do that, so would need it all spelled out for them, and would latch onto this stuff about Castrovalva. Yeah. Then they'd have to get there, so he'd need to make them believe that they were flying the TARDIS to Castrovalva themselves, even though he already had fake Adric punching the coordinates, just so he could confuse the Doctor to death. All this, remember, just in case the whole crashing the TARDIS into the Big Bang didn't work, and because, I guess, having fake Adric simply knife the Doctor in the belly wasn't showy enough. As the Master himself says, he leaves nothing to chance. No shit, says the storyline of this entire adventure. Of course, the Master's arrogance has sown the seeds of his own destruction as the Castrovalvans rebel against the truth of their creation and their creator, smashing up the device that the Master has been using to hold it all together and causing the place to collapse in on itself. This collapse affects the Master's TARDIS, keeping it trapped within, unable to break free of the forces unleashed, leading to one of my favourite Master comeuppance scenes, where he's prevented from leaving Castrovalva by its enraged citizens who violently tear at him and drag him back into presumably impending agonising death. It's so raw, and it really sticks in the head. Our heroes, at least, do escape, with the Doctor now stable and ready to experience the universe in a new body, with a sweet smile and a stick of celery in his lapel, the reason for which we'll never know until the end of the Fifth Doctor's era. And that's Castrovalva, a story that would have benefited from today's money and special effects, but didn't do too badly with what it had. The design of the Castrovalvan interior reflects the design architecture of MC Escher, even if the FX can't in any way recreate the twisted perspectives of the original artwork. And that doesn't matter too much, since we're not really there for very long. It's all competently directed by Cumming, with committed performances from the supporting cast as the obliviously doomed people of Castrovalva, who we're made to like from the get-go, making their fate doubly tragic. And I think Bidmead does a good job introducing us to this new Doctor, and has a lot of fun with the post-regeneration trauma stuff, while still doing that Bidmead thing of trying to make the show a bit more highbrow by using concepts such as recursion and pretending if you give something a gobbledygook math name, like block transfer computation, it's somehow not magic. But of course, we're not here for recursion or maths, even if they do play their part in the story. And Bidmead does some nice little narrative foreshadowing towards the beginning as Tegan and Nyssa ponder looking up index file in the index file, recursion, as they try to work out how to operate the TARDIS. We're here to see the new Doctor stumble about the place, trying to settle into himself, and that's exactly what we get. Castrovalva, for me, earns a very respectable 7 out of 10, with most of that score weighted towards the first half of the story. Now, what 3 things will I be keeping from this story in my personal TARDIS databanks? Number 1. When the Castrovalvan Shardavan rebels against the Master with the great line, "You made us, man of evil, but we are free!" Classic. Number 2. When Adric says to a guard in all earnestness at the beginning of the story, "Don't you realise the Doctor just saved us all from the Master?" That's right up there with, "Grace, don't you see? I have 13 lives." How can any of them see that? You saying it is the first time any of them have ever heard anything about it. It's wonderful. Number 3. The 5th Doctor's half-moon glasses. So brilliantly uncool. I mean, I'd never wear them, but still. Alright, Castrovalva folks. I'd love to know your thoughts on this story, so please tell me about them in the comments, as well as any suggestions that you have for future classics reviews. In the meantime, I'll leave you with a delightful little factoid. There's a real Castrovalva. It's a commune in Italy, and was the inspiration for MC Escher's lithograph print of the same name. Isn't that great? Well, until next time, don't get caught in any space-time traps.